Hey guys, tonight we journey back thousands of years, stepping quietly through sun-drenched corridors and echoing halls of gold in ancient Egypt. Imagine waking each morning beneath the watchful eyes of painted gods, your first breaths mingling with faint scents of sandalwood incense and Nile lilies drifting through carved window lattices. You're a servant in Pharaoh's grand palace, a place of beauty, power, and whispers. And let's be real, as glamorous as that sounds, you probably won't survive this. Pharaoh's palace isn't exactly known for forgiveness, but don't worry, I'll guide you carefully. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a quick comment below, sharing your location and local time. I love seeing where you all are listening from around the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Sunrise in the palace is never quiet or leisurely. It's a beautiful chaos. You stir awake on a simple reed mat, woven by your own calloused fingers. The first golden rays creep through the narrow openings above your sleeping quarters, illuminating dust motes drifting lazily through the air. Stretching, you sit up, muscles already aching from yesterday's chores. Even in your sleepy haze, you know rest is brief and precious. The day's duties are impatient, and Pharaoh does not tolerate tardiness. Emerging into the palace courtyard, you shield your eyes against the blinding sun. Already hot despite the early hour, the massive stone walls glow warmly, painted scenes of gods and conquest becoming vibrant under daylight. There's a rhythm to palace mornings, an intricate dance choreographed by tradition and fear of failure. Servants scurry purposefully, each step practiced 1,000 times, each movement precise. You're new enough that your own motions aren't yet graceful, more like a stumbling newborn calf, adorable from afar, but an annoyance up close. Your overseer, a stern-faced man named Nakt, watches your approach with narrowed eyes, his shaved head glistening under fresh oil. He grunts once, a signal you quickly learned means hurry. Nakt never bothers much with speech. Why waste words when a look can speak volumes? His expectations weigh heavy, but you can't help but wonder if beneath his perpetual scowl lies some hidden softness. Perhaps he's secretly fond of cats or poetry, or both. You decide it's safer not to ask. Nakt gestures sharply, directing you toward your first task of the morning, fetching water. It might sound easy, but this isn't your kitchen faucet at home. Instead, it involves trekking through palace corridors, winding down endless stairs, and back again, balancing heavy clay jars filled to the brim. And if you spill even a drop, you'll hear about it from Nakt's notoriously loud voice, echoing through the marble halls, making even the statues seem disappointed in you. Passing through expansive chambers, lined with columns painted sky blue and crowned with lotus blossoms, you note the opulence that surrounds you daily. While the palace's luxury is breathtaking to visitors, for you, it's merely a backdrop to your demanding existence. You quickly learned that those beautiful walls aren't forgiving. They magnify every whispered mistake. As you carry your burden back up to the inner palace, your muscles burn pleasantly from exertion. You slip briefly on a marble step slick from morning cleaning. Your heart stops, the jug wobbles ominously, but you recover just in time. Nearby, 2 older servants exchange glances. They've been here longer than you've been alive, and their faces wrinkle with barely concealed amusement. Rookie mistakes, they're thinking. It's embarrassing, sure, but at least you provided them with some entertainment. Reaching the inner chambers again, you pour the water carefully into stone basins set aside for washing and rituals. Nearby, temple priests gather quietly, their linen garments pristine, their heads shaved clean, their gazes distant yet alert. You watch them briefly, fascinated by their solemn dedication. Historians still argue whether servants were allowed to engage much with priests, but for now, you're content just to observe. This world you've entered is complicated enough without adding divine politics into your morning routine. With water duties done, you find yourself tasked with opening the intricately carved shutters along the royal corridors, letting daylight flood richly painted rooms filled with priceless treasures, gifts from foreign kingdoms, spoils of conquest, offerings from devoted subjects. Your fingers trace delicate ivory carvings, lingering briefly over inlaid gems that sparkle hypnotically in the sunlight. As tempting as these treasures may seem, you're wise enough not to linger too long. Servants who linger tend to become subjects of uncomfortable palace gossip, or worse. Your next duty brings you to Pharaoh's private chambers, empty now as he rises later, indulging in luxuries servants can only dream about. But his chamber must be ready. You straighten bedding made from finest linen, fluff pillows embroidered with scenes of victorious battles, and carefully adjust window coverings precisely as Pharaoh demands. You notice a small pile of date pits discarded carelessly by his bedside, Pharaoh's midnight snack habit, a minor detail you hadn't expected to discover. As your first busy hours draw to a close, you finally pause, stepping onto a balcony overlooking the Nile. Below, the great river moves sluggishly, carrying fishermen, traders, and palace workers like yourself, tiny figures striving under the relentless Egyptian sun. The palace is waking now, in earnest, voices mingling into a comforting hum of life and duty. Despite the harshness, the uncertainty, and the exhaustion that awaits each day, you find a quiet moment of pride in the work you're entrusted to perform. You are part of something grand, something that future generations will study and debate. But for now, there's barely time to catch your breath. Your stomach rumbles softly. Breakfast, if you're lucky, awaits somewhere between chores. This is only your first morning after all, and the palace has plenty more secrets for you to uncover. Your first days at the palace blur together like a feverish dream, each sunrise pulling you deeper into Pharaoh's rigorous routines. You quickly realize there's no training manual, no YouTube tutorial titled 10 Palace Servant Mistakes to Avoid. Just stern glances from Nacht, discreet whispers from fellow servants, and a steady stream of trial and error. Today, Nacht assigns you the delicate task of setting the royal dining chambers. You enter cautiously, eyes wide. Imagine the fanciest restaurant you've ever visited, multiply it by 10, add gold to everything, including the spoons, and you're about halfway there. Rows of polished stone tables stand in meticulous formation, each place carefully measured to Pharaoh's exacting standards. One plate misaligned, one utensil missing, and Nacht might very well send you to scrub the Nile banks again. You begin placing silver goblets, etched with scenes of hunting and harvesting. They're heavy and cold, a stark contrast to the hot Egyptian air pressing through high windows. Nearby, another servant named Ahmose arranges platters of fruit and bread. He's older, friendly enough, but already resigned to the monotonous rhythm of palace life. "Careful with those goblets," he mutters, smiling knowingly. "They're worth more than our entire village." You laugh nervously, at least until you spot Nacht watching from a distance, his eyes sharp enough to pierce stone. Meals at the palace aren't just about sustenance. They're theatrical events, performances of Pharaoh's power and sophistication. Even something as simple as placing napkins, finest linen, embroidered with hieroglyphs, must be executed flawlessly. Your fingers shake slightly as you fold each one carefully, your heart rate accelerating when Nacht silently approaches. He inspects your work, nods subtly, then moves on. You exhale quietly. Today, at least, you've survived inspection. Historians still argue whether Pharaoh himself took notice of the smaller details, like perfectly folded napkins or symmetrically aligned fruit platters, but no servant ever risked finding out the hard way. Better safe than sorry, an ancient Egyptian motto you adopt rapidly. With dining preparations finished, you're summoned urgently to assist in the palace library, an honour usually reserved for senior servants. Excitement and anxiety battle within you. Could this be your chance to shine, or another opportunity for catastrophic embarrassment. The palace library is an awe-inspiring sight. Countless scrolls line shelves reaching nearly to the ceiling, each one carefully labelled, arranged and maintained. Dusting scrolls, however, is no simple chore. Papyrus is fragile. A careless brush could damage irreplaceable knowledge. You work slowly, reverently, until a sudden sneeze explodes from nowhere. Thankfully, no scrolls are harmed, though your pride takes a direct hit when you hear a suppressed chuckle behind you. It's Merit, the palace scribe, clearly amused by your dusty dilemma. "Careful there," she teases gently, her voice soft but authoritative. Merit is respected and intimidatingly smart. Rumour has it she memorised half the scrolls herself. "Don't worry," she continues, seeing your panicked expression. "We've all sneezed on history at least once." Feeling slightly more at ease, you return to work, occasionally glancing curiously at scrolls detailing Egyptian medicine, astronomy, agriculture, and foreign diplomacy. This isn't just a library, it's Egypt's entire wisdom housed under one gilded roof. You catch glimpses of texts describing strange lands filled with snow, forests and beasts no Egyptian has ever witnessed firsthand. To you, this feels fantastical, like reading a medieval manuscript about dragons or unicorns. After your library duties end, you're called back by Nakt to aid in the main ceremonial chamber. Here, protocol becomes even stricter. You quickly learn there's a specific way to stand, breathe, and even blink when Pharaoh himself is present. Any deviation risks offence or worse punishment. Nakt guides you sternly through each step, his expression one of practiced annoyance, but perhaps, just perhaps, tinged with a faint hint of pride at your improving performance. "Never look directly at Pharaoh," he warns. "He is a god among men, and servants must know their place." You nod obediently, but secretly wonder, does Pharaoh even notice the faces of servants around him? Or do they blur together into one anonymous, respectful mass? As you practice standing perfectly still, your mind wanders briefly to your home village, far from Pharaoh's shining halls. The simplicity there, the freedom to laugh openly or trip without dire consequence, it's a distant memory now. Still, palace life holds its own strange allure, a mixture of fascination, tension, and a touch of pride. Not everyone can say they polished goblets that touch the lips of the most powerful man on earth. By evening, exhaustion clings heavily to your limbs. Your muscles ache, your feet protest against another step, yet you push onward. There's one last duty, clearing away the remnants of the royal feast. As you gather plates piled with barely touched delicacies, Amos shakes his head sadly. "Enough food here to feed a small village," he sighs quietly. "Yet tomorrow it'll start again." You nod silently, struck by the strange paradox of palace extravagance, so much waste in a land where most struggle daily. You sneak a bite of honeyed date bread, rich, delicious, forbidden, enjoying a brief rebellious moment. Servant perks might be small, but tonight you savour them shamelessly. Finally done, you drag your weary body toward your quarters, passing guards in gleaming armour, priests murmuring nighttime prayers, and servants already preparing for tomorrow's tasks. The palace never truly sleeps, you realise. It breathes rhythmically, ceaselessly, as if sustained by some divine heartbeat. Lying again on your modest reed mat, you stare at the painted ceiling, shadows dancing slowly under flickering torchlight. Each day in Pharaoh's palace feels like walking a tightrope, a thrilling yet terrifying balancing act between reward and ruin. But tonight, you've kept your balance. Tonight, you've learned something invaluable. Survival here isn't just skill or obedience, it's about accepting each stumble, each sneeze, and still moving forward, one careful step at a time. With this quiet realization settling comfortably into your tired mind, you drift gently towards sleep, knowing tomorrow's lessons wait eagerly for sunrise. Every new dawn at Pharaoh's palace introduces you to yet another corner of this majestic labyrinth. Today, it's the royal kitchens. You approach cautiously, the air thickening rapidly with the scents of roasting meats, spices, and warm bread baking over clay ovens. Instantly, you're overwhelmed by noise and motion. Shouting cooks, rushing servants, clinking utensils, and bubbling pots create an intense symphony of culinary chaos. Chef Sebni rules here, a large man with an even larger personality, widely known for his temper and legendary ability to taste subtle flavors. Even Pharaoh himself can't detect. Seeing your hesitation, he beckons sharply with a meat-stained hand, barking orders as he gestures toward stacks of vegetables needing urgent chopping. "No one eats if you stand there admiring the scenery," Sebni growls, though there's a glint in his eye suggesting amusement at your bewildered expression. You swiftly pick up a bronze blade, slightly dull as only higher-ranking servants get the sharpest knives, and begin slicing onions, garlic, and strange tubers you don't recognize. Each slice fills your eyes with tears, turning your vision blurry enough that the kitchen appears as if underwater. A Mose, also assigned kitchen duty today, laughs kindly from beside you. "Crying already? Save those tears, friend. Pharaoh hasn't even tasted your cooking yet." As you chop methodically, you marvel at the sheer variety of ingredients filling shelves and baskets around you. Egypt's culinary imagination seems boundless. Honeycombs dripping golden sweetness, salted fish drying under the relentless sun, spices imported from distant lands, some worth their weight in silver, and baskets overflowing with dates, figs, grapes, and pomegranates. And then there's the stranger fare: dried locusts seasoned with cumin, gazelle steaks marinated in wine, and even something labelled ominously as river delicacy. Perhaps a polite euphemism for Nile crocodile meat, a dish historians still argue whether Pharaoh genuinely enjoyed or simply tolerated for status. Sebni's demanding voice snaps you back into reality. He's now motioning urgently towards steaming pots bubbling violently on the fire. "Stir quickly, unless you prefer your stew burned," he bellows. You rush over, grabbing a heavy wooden spoon, stirring desperately, hoping not to ruin Pharaoh's lunch. You lean over cautiously, inhaling an intense aroma: garlic, coriander, cumin, and something distinctly pungent. Sebni catches your puzzled look and grins broadly. "Fermented fish paste," he announces proudly. "Smells awful, tastes divine. Pharaoh's favourite condiment. He claims it keeps illness away." Privately, you doubt this fish paste prevents anything but romantic interest, yet you continue stirring dutifully, smiling politely. The dish might smell questionable, but offending Chef Sebni feels riskier. Besides, palace survival means nodding appreciatively at whatever questionable delicacy you're handed, whether you truly appreciate it or not. Meanwhile, the kitchen grows increasingly frenetic as lunch hour approaches. Servants scuttle swiftly through narrow aisles between ovens and prep stations, balancing precarious platters piled high with dishes intended for Pharaoh and his esteemed guests. You soon find yourself tasked with arranging elaborate garnishes on roasted duck, perfectly symmetrical fig slices, pomegranate seeds, and fresh mint sprigs. It's an oddly artistic endeavour, made nerve-wracking by Sebni's watchful gaze. "Beautiful," he murmurs approvingly, eyeing your finished arrangement. But Pharaoh eats with his eyes first, so it had better taste as flawless as it looks. You nod nervously. At least your first garnish received praise. Now you just hope Pharaoh appreciates symmetry as much as Sebni. With lunch preparations finally complete, you assist other servants carrying platters to the royal dining chamber. This procession is a delicate ballet. One careless move, one misstep, could send roasted meats, honeyed pastries, and wine cascading across polished floors. Nacht stands at the chamber's entrance, overseeing every servant's movement, his expression tense with practiced anxiety. Miraculously, your platter reaches the table unharmed, and you step back, observing Pharaoh seated comfortably among his advisors, scribes, and visiting dignitaries. They converse quietly, politely, though beneath polite smiles, politics simmer as fiercely as the stew you've stirred earlier. Pharaoh himself surveys each dish carefully before taking his first bite. A breathless silence follows until he nods approvingly. You let out a soft sigh of relief alongside the rest of the kitchen staff lurking anxiously by the doorway. Back in the kitchens afterward, Sebony celebrates modestly by handing you a leftover pastry, crisp, flaky, filled generously with honey and crushed pistachios. The sweetness floods your senses, momentarily erasing all earlier stresses. "Don't tell Nakte," Sebony whispers, conspiratorially. "That man thinks servants should survive on air alone." You smile gratefully, nibbling quietly, grateful for Sebony's generosity and your improving reputation in the palace hierarchy. Kitchen duty might be intense, hot and mildly traumatic, but small moments like these make it bearable. As afternoon fades gently toward evening, Sebony invites you to join him at the storage rooms, a maze of shelves and jars stacked meticulously with preserved ingredients. Here he proudly shows off his prized possessions, expensive spices and imported delicacies hidden away from casual servants. Sebony's enthusiasm is infectious. You listen eagerly as he describes each spice's flavour, fragrance, and supposed medicinal powers. "Black pepper," he whispers reverently, opening a small jar carefully. "Worth gold in Pharaoh's court and tastes even better." You marvel at tiny, black grains whose humble appearance belies their precious value. Chef Sebony chuckles softly. Funny how something so small commands respect. Remember this lesson. Respect can come from surprising places. Evening shadows lengthen across palace walls as your day in the royal kitchens finally draws to a close. Your hands still smell faintly of spices and fish paste, but your stomach is pleasantly full. Another rare servant perk you secretly enjoy. Tomorrow might bring different tasks, new challenges, perhaps new mishaps. But tonight, you've survived another day in Pharaoh's unpredictable world, a small victory worth savouring. As you slip gratefully into your modest sleeping quarters, you dream of spices, golden pastries, and endless kitchens. But deep down, you already sense tomorrow's adventure brewing, just hopefully with fewer fermented fish involved. Today, your duties take an unexpected turn toward the spiritual. Early morning sees you assigned to assist temple priests with sacred rituals, work infinitely more delicate than chopping onions or carrying water. Approaching the sacred chambers cautiously, you inhale the sweet scent of myrrh and sandalwood drifting through polished halls. The priests regard you silently, their expressions serene but watchful, eyes glittering beneath painted lids. It's impossible to guess if they're quietly impressed by your humble presence or simply waiting for you to blunder spectacularly. Priest Sabu, an older, dignified man draped in pristine linen robes, embroidered in gold, beckons you forward. His shaved head gleams softly in torchlight, and when he speaks, his voice floats gently, barely above a whisper. "Move slowly," he advises softly. "The gods dislike haste." You nod solemnly, wondering if your usual pace is displeasing to divinity, though frankly, you'd assume the gods have bigger concerns than clumsy servants tripping over their sandals. Still, palace protocol means taking every word seriously, so you slow your steps dramatically, suddenly feeling like you're moving underwater. Sabu instructs you to gather items needed for today's ceremony. Intricately carved incense burners, polished gold bowls, vials of scented oil, and bundles of dried lotus flowers. Each object demands meticulous care. Dropping something here wouldn't merely break pottery, it could offend the gods themselves, earning a wrath that no servant's insurance covers. As you arrange the ritual items, priests gather silently nearby, chanting softly in ancient tongues you can't decipher. Their voices hum melodically, resonating through your bones, filling the air with a soothing rhythm. You steal discreet glances, fascinated by their focused devotion and controlled grace. Historians still argue whether servants ever truly understood these sacred rites or merely followed careful instructions to avoid disaster. For now, you settle comfortably into ignorance, content to fulfill your role without causing divine trouble. Finally, Sabu directs you to ignite incense, a task simple in theory but nerve-wracking in practice. Matches haven't exactly been invented yet, and fire in a palace filled with priceless tapestries feels uncomfortably risky. Carefully, you use flint and steel to strike a tiny spark, patiently nursing it into a flickering flame, breathing slowly to steady your trembling hands. Thankfully, the incense lights easily, releasing sweet clouds of fragrance spiraling upward toward painted ceilings, depicting the gods themselves, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and Ra staring down solemnly as if judging your flame-lighting technique. Nearby, young priestesses arrange flower petals on polished floors, crafting elaborate patterns symbolizing rebirth and renewal. Watching their careful artistry, you briefly wonder if the gods appreciate these intricate decorations or simply view them as heavenly interior design. Either way, you admire their dedication, even if your own floral arrangement skills extend no further than tossing petals randomly and hoping for the best. With incense and flowers prepared, Sabu signals gently, guiding you toward the altar chamber itself, an inner sanctum you've never dared approach before. Your breath catches slightly as you enter cautiously, feeling somehow heavier beneath the weight of holiness. The altar itself is carved from white alabaster, polished smooth enough to reflect flickering torches nearby. Golden vessels gleam softly in the dim light, positioned with mathematical precision. Priests gather solemnly, eyes closed, swaying gently in rhythmic chant. Sabu motions for silence, and suddenly the room feels utterly still, nothing but faint whispers of cloth rustling, heartbeats pounding softly, and incense curling lazily toward the ceiling. Even breathing too loudly feels disrespectful, so you hold your breath until dizziness reminds you that even priests need oxygen. Then Sabu approaches the altar reverently, pouring scented oil delicately into golden bowls. While murmuring soft prayers, you're struck by how gracefully he moves, each motion deliberate, precise, like an artist painting invisible brushstrokes into sacred space. Watching him, you feel profoundly privileged, if slightly terrified, to witness something most Egyptians never will. Yet somehow, even now, a tiny voice wonders irreverently whether Sabu secretly practices these moves alone in his chambers, rehearsing perfection for divine approval. Ceremony completed, priests slowly disperse, leaving you and Sabu alone briefly. He turns, offering a rare smile, subtle, barely noticeable, but genuine. "The gods have not punished your presence," he says softly, eyes twinkling gently. "Perhaps they find you amusing." You're unsure if being divine entertainment is complimentary, but you smile gratefully anyway, relieved your temple duty hasn't triggered heavenly wrath. As you tidy up ritual vessels, you quietly observe Sabu carefully returning each sacred item to its precise place. His meticulousness makes palace kitchens look chaotic, yet there's comfort in knowing someone here genuinely respects detail beyond mere fear of punishment. Leaving the temple chambers behind, you return to palace hallways, bustling with mundane life. Servants rushing frantically, scribes scribbling reports, and guards whispering discreet gossip. After temple serenity, the palace feels overwhelmingly loud, each noise amplified dramatically. You pass Nacht, scowling perpetually, yet nodding faintly in silent approval. Perhaps he's learned about your successful temple service, though equally likely, he's just relieved you haven't burned down sacred spaces. Your afternoon duties prove less spiritual, but no less demanding. Polishing gold ornaments, adorning palace corridors, each surface reflecting your tired eyes. You catch glimpses of your reflection, noticing smudges of incense ash still clinging to your cheeks, a faint reminder of today's unusual privilege. The gold glimmers mockingly, beautiful but mercilessly prone to fingerprints, as if Pharaoh's interior decorator intentionally picked surfaces requiring endless servant attention. Evening arrives quietly, stars emerging shyly through palace windows as your muscles finally protest. You retire gratefully to your humble mat, replaying today's ceremony in your mind. Priests chanting melodically, incense swirling gently upward, Sabu's dignified movements, and the quiet honour of serving gods you've never fully understood. Though exhausted, your thoughts linger warmly, drifting gently towards sleep, comforted by today's quiet lesson. That true devotion requires no understanding, only humble willingness. Tomorrow might bring entirely new challenges, perhaps back-breaking labour or irritating fish paste again, but tonight you're content simply knowing the gods apparently tolerate you. And sometimes palace survival truly is just divine amusement. Today your chores lead you to the banks of the Nile, facing a task both humble and oddly daunting: laundry duty. You head there early, the rising sun turning the vast river into a ribbon of liquid gold, its serene beauty a stark contrast to your sweaty, muddy morning ahead. Armed with heavy baskets piled high with linen robes, sheets, and even Pharaoh's favourite embroidered shawls, you stumble across slippery stones, praying silently that your balance remains better than usual. The Nile, source of life and legend, seems tranquil from afar, but up close it's less idyllic. Mud squelches beneath your sandals, insects buzz aggressively near your ears, and hidden currents swirl ominously beneath deceptively calm waters. And of course there's always the charming possibility of meeting local wildlife, namely crocodiles, who aren't known for friendly small talk. At the riverbank, fellow servants gather silently, each claiming their usual spot among smooth rocks polished by generations of laundries past. You follow their lead, soaking linen in cool river water before scrubbing vigorously against rough stones. The repetitive motion is exhausting, monotonous, and oddly satisfying as you watch stubborn stains slowly yield beneath relentless scrubbing. Beside you, Amos chuckles softly, noting your intense concentration. Careful there, scrub any harder and you'll erase Pharaoh's favourite pattern, unless you'd like to personally apologise to him. You pause, briefly panicking before realising he's teasing, at least you hope. Laughing sheepishly, you lighten your touch slightly. Damaging Pharaoh's clothing isn't exactly a career-enhancing move. Nearby, several servants exchange hushed gossip about palace rumours, potential promotions, secret scandals, and an ongoing debate among historians, or so they say, regarding whether Pharaoh's robes were truly washed daily or merely aired to protect expensive fabrics. You secretly suspect the airing option, especially now your fingers ache from scrubbing embroidered threads too delicate for your rough hands. As midday heat intensifies, washing grows even tougher. Sweat drips annoyingly into your eyes, attracting biting insects keenly interested in sampling palace servant blood. Still, despite discomfort, there's comfort in camaraderie among servants, all equally hot, itchy, and mildly miserable together. Palace hierarchies fade temporarily, beside the Nile replaced by shared grumbling, quiet laughter, and collective groans whenever someone slips dramatically on algae-coated stones. Your brief laughter ends abruptly when you spot a strange shadow sliding lazily beneath river's surface, too large, too sinister for comfort. Your heart jolts anxiously. Crocodile sightings aren't unusual, though usually distant enough for false security. But today, this shadow glides unsettlingly close, eyes briefly surfacing, cold, calculating, and disturbingly intelligent. You suddenly feel like Pharaoh's linen might become less white than intended. Amos notices your pale face, calmly whispering reassurance. Relax, he's just curious. Crocodiles rarely attack laundry servants. We smell too much like soap. You're unsure whether he's serious or gently mocking your nerves, but the crocodile drifts away eventually, clearly unimpressed by your panic. With danger momentarily past, you resume scrubbing, heart gradually calming. Laundry by Nile certainly offers adventure, but you'd happily skip this particular thrill next time. Still, this close encounter provides excellent material for future exaggerated storytelling. That crocodile was huge, you'll say dramatically, conveniently forgetting your earlier panic squeak. As afternoon approaches, linen finally rinses clean, white fabric gleaming under brilliant sunlight. Now comes drying, a task requiring careful balancing skills as linens stretch across makeshift wooden racks. Any slip, any careless drape could send precious garments tumbling back into muddy waters. Your fingers tremble slightly, vividly imagining Nacht's reaction to ruined laundry. Disappointment combined with creative punishments you'd rather avoid. Thankfully, drying passes without incident, linen flapping gently in warm breeze, fresh scent mingling pleasantly with earthy Nile air. You pause briefly, admiring your collective labour, clean fabric billowing softly, sunlight catching embroidery threads sparkling subtly. It's oddly beautiful, a quiet, simple pride amidst demanding palace life. Returning to palace gates later, carrying dry linen stacked neatly, your muscles protest loudly, but your spirits remain surprisingly buoyant. You've survived crocodiles, slippery stones, aggressive bugs, and your own clumsiness today, a modest yet genuine achievement. Entering familiar palace corridors, noise returns immediately, shouting guards, whispered intrigues, scribes scratching endless reports. Palace chaos feels comforting somehow, reassuringly predictable after Nile's unpredictable hazards. Even Nacht nods briefly, apparently satisfied by your linen-laden return, though naturally, no smile accompanies approval. Smiles cost extra, clearly beyond servant pay grade. Inside storage chambers, you neatly place fresh linen alongside carefully arranged stacks. Impressive inventory representing countless hours, scrubbing, rinsing, and drying. Your tired fingers brush gently across Pharaoh's favourite shawl, imagining him wearing it proudly, unaware, or perhaps uncaring, about today's quiet dramas required for its pristine condition. Day's chores complete, evening finds you finally collapsing gratefully onto familiar reed mat, exhaustion settling heavily yet comfortably into your bones. Your dreams drift toward Nile waters again, crocodile eyes gleaming ominously beneath gently rippling surface, though now, thankfully, from safe distance, your subconscious apparently unwilling to risk. Another close encounter. Tomorrow promises new challenges, different tasks, new palace corners explored. But tonight, you're content savouring quiet satisfaction gained from today's mundane yet strangely exhilarating laundry adventure. After all, how many servants can truthfully claim surviving crocodile-infested laundry duties? Sleep claims you gently, serenaded softly by distant river sounds, Nile whispers carried on gentle breezes through palace windows, comforting reminders that even mundane chores in Pharaoh's palace hold unexpected adventures, especially involving questionable crocodile curiosity. Today's palace duties pull you into a new realm entirely, the secretive and surprisingly bizarre world of royal beauty rituals. At sunrise, you're summoned urgently to assist in chambers filled with strange aromas, exotic potions, and cosmetics whose ingredients you'd frankly prefer not knowing, especially before breakfast. The royal beautician, a strikingly confident woman named Nefret, greets you briskly, her eyes scanning you critically, silently judging whether you're worthy of handling Pharaoh's delicate skincare regimen. "You're late," she snaps, though you're certain you arrived precisely on time. Clearly, beauty in Pharaoh's palace runs on its own impatient schedule. Nefret immediately thrusts several ceramic jars into your startled hands, each one carefully labelled with hieroglyphs depicting ingredients you nervously struggle to recognise. "This one," she announces proudly, holding a pot with suspiciously dark contents. Is made from crocodile dung, excellent for complexion. Pharaoh swears by it. You resist visibly grimacing. Crocodile dung sunscreen isn't something you'd imagined applying, ever. Yet here you stand, palace servant obligations stretching into unsettling new territory. Carefully, reluctantly, you stir the pungent paste, silently questioning the sanity of royal beauty standards. Nearby, other jars contain ingredients equally odd. Crushed scarab beetles shimmering iridescently, ground ostrich eggshells promising skin smoothness, honeycomb fragrant enough to nearly mask dung's distinctive aroma. Egyptian beauty, you quickly realise, requires both creativity and courage. Still, considering your recent Nile encounter, crocodile dung seems oddly fitting, perhaps payback for yesterday's unwelcome reptilian visitor. As preparations progress, Nefret shares endless beauty secrets, her voice enthusiastic, eyes sparkling with genuine passion. Apply this dung mask gently, she instructs earnestly. Too thick it flakes, too thin, Pharaoh questions effectiveness. You nod seriously, privately imagining Pharaoh inspecting himself critically, complaining to advisors about inadequate dung thickness. Palace servants truly hear everything, whether historically documented or amusingly speculated. Next comes cosmetics, powders tinted brightly, ochre reds, malachite greens, cobalt blues, all crafted meticulously from minerals imported from distant mines. Their vibrant hues impressively exotic, yet mildly alarming when considered carefully. Painting Pharaoh's face involves both artistic skill and meticulous patience. One misplaced stroke risks transforming divine ruler into unfortunate clown. Historians still debate whether male cosmetics symbolize divine status or mere fashionable vanity, though after careful dung application, you privately lean toward vanity. Pharaoh's eyeliner, a crucial cosmetic known as kohl, particularly fascinates you. Stored delicately in carved ivory tubes, kohl's main ingredient, galena, a toxic lead-based mineral, offers alluring drama yet dubious health benefits. Servants whisper that prolonged use risks illness. However, Pharaoh remains firmly devoted. You quietly ponder irony, royal beauty rituals risking royal health, yet questioning Pharaoh's judgment isn't exactly career-enhancing behaviour, so you remain respectfully silent. Finally, fragrance duties await. Perfumes fill delicate alabaster vials, carefully mixed oils derived from lotus blossoms, myrrh, sandalwood, and rare imported spices. Each vial demands careful handling. Spilling would waste precious resources while enraging Nefret, whose temper matches Sebni's kitchen fury. As you cautiously arrange perfume bottles, your fingers tremble slightly. Egyptian fragrances are famously potent. One careless drop risks enveloping Pharaoh's chambers permanently in overwhelming lotus scent. Pleasant initially, but headache-inducing when prolonged. Thankfully, your careful movements avoid fragrance catastrophes, today at least. Once preparations conclude, Nefret personally escorts cosmetics directly into Pharaoh's private chambers, leaving you behind gratefully tidying scattered beauty supplies. Alone briefly, you experiment discreetly with leftover kohl, smudging small streaks along your own eyelids curiously. Reflected in polished bronze mirrors nearby, your eyes appear dramatically striking, though slightly theatrical for servant standards. You quickly wipe away evidence, hoping Nefret won't notice unauthorized experimentation. Returning beauty products safely, you wander palace corridors briefly, before new duties beckon, your thoughts lingering on today's bizarre encounters. Pharaoh's beauty regimen, though undeniably elaborate, feels oddly relatable. Everyone, even rulers viewed as gods, worries quietly about appearance, dreading imperfections, seeking reassurance beneath polished facades. Though admittedly, most people skip dung application. Later, chatting quietly with fellow servants, you humorously exaggerate details from today's unusual tasks, enjoying their amused reactions to crocodile dung revelations, secretly pleased knowing palace gossip now includes your absurdly adventurous beauty experience. Servants' shared laughter provides comforting camaraderie amidst daily palace pressures. Evening finally arrives, darkness softening harsh palace edges, shadows masking gold decorations, palace noises fading gradually into comforting silence. Retreating gratefully into modest sleeping quarters, you stretch sore muscles appreciatively, inhaling faint lingering fragrance, honeycomb sweetness mingled oddly with subtle dung notes stubbornly clinging despite careful scrubbing. As you drift towards sleep, palace beauty rituals dance vividly through dreams, shimmering powders swirling brightly, perfumes whispering secrets gently, crocodile dung masks bizarrely prominent. Your subconscious clearly finds amusement in today's events, in replaying absurd moments repeatedly, each version increasingly exaggerated, increasingly amusing. Yet beneath humorous absurdity lies quiet insight gained today. Palace life, despite glamorous appearances, remains stubbornly human beneath surface perfection. Rulers and servants alike quietly struggling with universal vanity, fears, insecurities. Everyone desires quietly to feel beautiful, accepted, loved, even Pharaoh himself, behind crocodile dung masks and dramatic eyeliner. Smiling sleepily, comforted gently by today's humorous yet insightful experiences, you finally drift gently toward rest. Dreams fading softly, replaced by reassuring darkness, warm comfort surrounding you protectively. Tomorrow surely promises new palace adventures, but tonight you're content simply savouring today's bizarre, unforgettable beauty rituals. Grateful your own cosmetics rarely involve reptilian ingredients, at least outside Pharaoh's unpredictable palace world. Morning breaks unusually vibrant across Pharaoh's palace today, and you quickly remember why. Tonight marks a grand festival. These celebrations honour gods, commemorate victories, and offer servants thrilling yet exhausting duties. Because who doesn't enjoy preparing elaborate festivities you'll never fully participate in? You're summoned early, knowing today promises chaos, colour, and an inevitable headache by evening. Preparations begin instantly, palace corridors bustling frantically with activity. Servants rush carrying endless trays of fruit, breads, and aromatic flowers, decorations spilling from baskets onto marble floors, polished meticulously yesterday. Clearly, cleanliness standards vanish when festivals arrive, replaced by controlled pandemonium under Nakt's tense supervision. Even his usual scowl deepens significantly, warning silently, today isn't ideal for rookie mistakes. You're initially tasked with hanging decorative banners, large sheets of brightly dyed linen featuring scenes of Pharaoh's heroic achievements. Climbing shaky wooden ladders, you wonder silently whether ancient Egyptians understood basic physics. These ladders certainly defy gravity ominously. Balancing precariously, you attach banners awkwardly, silently questioning whether Pharaoh genuinely appreciates these artistic tributes or simply enjoys making servants sweat nervously. Regardless, the colourful fabrics wave cheerfully, immediately transforming palace walls from elegant solemnity to festive exuberance. Mid-morning sees you dispatched urgently to courtyards transformed dramatically into entertainment venues. Here, musicians rehearse loudly, drums pounding rhythmically, harps strumming melodically, flutes piercing air shrilly enough to startle nearby pigeons. Your ears immediately protest, though your heartbeat inexplicably quickens, festival excitement proving contagious despite inevitable servant exhaustion ahead. Nearby jugglers practice astonishing tricks, balls, knives, and even flaming torches tossed casually skyward, their skill mesmerizing yet nerve-wracking when standing close. One performer, noticing your apprehension, cheerfully tosses you a small leather ball, encouraging participation. You attempt juggling bravely, quickly discovering hidden talent primarily involving accidental self-injury. Laughter erupts warmly around you, embarrassment fading into camaraderie as fellow servants share similar juggling mishaps. Apparently, juggling skill isn't palace servant hiring criteria. Afternoon demands meticulous feast preparation under Sebni's vigilant kitchen eye, his voice booming instructions louder than festival drums outside. Platters overflow lavishly, roasted goose glazed perfectly golden, bowls piled generously with figs, dates, honey-drizzled pastries, and delicacies whose ingredients you'd prefer never confirming. Sebni notices your cautious expression, grinning knowingly. "Relax," he whispers conspiratorially. "Today's delicacies contain minimal dung." You laugh gratefully, Sebni's humour offering welcome relief amidst hectic preparations. Still, feast logistics overwhelm quickly, each dish arranged artistically, garnished painstakingly, transported delicately through crowded corridors toward awaiting guests. Your nerves fray gradually. Silently, praying platters remain balanced despite shaking hands. Finally, sunset arrives gloriously. Golden sky painting palace walls, fiery hues, shadows stretching dramatically, signalling festivities officially commencing. Pharaoh emerges majestically, dressed resplendently, surrounded respectfully by advisors, scribes, visiting nobles eager to bask in royal glory. He nods graciously, signalling feast commencement, though secretly you suspect he enjoys festival spectacle nearly as much as honoured guests. Entertainment erupts instantly, music rising triumphantly, dancers swirling gracefully, jugglers performing flawlessly, thankfully, excluding amateur attempts earlier. Servants discreetly circulate among guests, refilling goblets generously, serving endless delicacies, quietly absorbing festival atmosphere while maintaining careful invisibility. Palace servants quickly learn discreet blending, present enough to anticipate needs, absent enough never to distract attention from Pharaoh's magnificence. Your duties finally pause briefly, allowing quick breath beneath fragrant palms framing palace courtyard. Festival chaos surrounds you pleasantly, laughter mingling melodically with music, firelight flickering warmly, colourful banners fluttering softly. You marvel quietly, festival energy momentarily replacing exhaustion with surprising exhilaration. Even palace servants occasionally enjoy events, despite primarily experiencing festivals through hurried glances, stolen bites, whispered gossip, exchanged quietly behind pillars. Nearby, Amos appears suddenly, grinning mischievously, discreetly, offering leftover honey pastry, salvaged cunningly from feast trays. Accepting gratefully, you savour sweetness deeply, flavour intensified by secrecy required for servants, sampling royal delicacies. "Pharaoh won't miss one pastry," Amos whispers reassuringly, eyes twinkling humorously. "Probably." Laughing quietly, you enjoy fleeting servant rebellion amidst controlled festivities, moments reminding gently that even amidst rigorous palace life, small rebellions occasionally sweeten daily existence pleasantly. Late evening arrives finally, festival winding gradually downward, music softening, torches burning lower, laughter fading quietly. Palace servants discreetly remove decorations, clean abandoned plates, silently returning palace orderliness, while guests depart happily, oblivious to immense servant effort required behind seamless festivities. Exhaustion settles heavily, muscles protesting loudly, yet satisfied pride remains quietly. Today's festival executed successfully, no catastrophic incidents occurring, despite countless potential opportunities. Returning exhaustedly towards sleeping quarters, palace quietness contrasts dramatically against earlier celebration intensity. Hallways empty, shadows lengthening gently. You pause briefly beneath banners, hung awkwardly earlier, smiling sleepily, remembering morning's anxiety vividly, yet fondly. Tomorrow inevitably promises new palace challenges, but tonight Quiet satisfaction envelops gently, reassuringly. Slipping gratefully onto familiar reed mat, exhaustion claims swiftly. Dreams coloured brightly by festival banners, fluttering softly, music echoing distantly, laughter whispering gently. Tonight, despite inevitable servant invisibility during celebrations, quiet pride lingers warmly, reminding gently that behind Pharaoh's glorious festivals lie countless dedicated hands, your own included. Sleep welcomes peacefully, palace whispers fading softly, festival echoes replaced gently by reassuring silence, dreams carrying vividly memories of today's colourful, chaotic, exhausting, yet strangely exhilarating palace festival adventures. The festival's echoes fade slowly from the palace halls, but new whispers quickly replace them. Today's tasks bring you deep into the palace corridors, where rumours float freely, especially whispers of a secret romance. Even in Pharaoh's grand palace, gossip remains everyone's favourite pastime. You're polishing golden statues, carefully buffing away smudged fingerprints, when you first overhear the murmurs. Two servant girls pass swiftly, their voices hushed, eyes darting cautiously. "Did you see how close they stood?" one whispers breathlessly. "Closer than protocol allows," the other replies knowingly, voice thick with scandalous delight. Your curiosity is immediately piqued. Palace romances rarely end well, particularly when involving royals, but secrets are irresistible here, and you're quickly swept up, hungry for details. As the day progresses, gossip intensifies. Snippets drift everywhere, during chores, meals, even whispered discreetly during temple rituals. The romance involves Prince Amenhotep, Pharaoh's younger brother, famously handsome and notoriously rebellious, and Lady Iset, a minor noblewoman known more for charm than political status. You recall glimpsing her briefly at yesterday's festival, her laughter musical, her eyes sparkling flirtatiously at Amenhotep's casual remarks. It seems harmless enough, yet palace romances rarely remain innocent, often spiralling into scandals capable of reshaping dynasties. Nacht's sharp eyes narrow suspiciously, sensing unrest among servants, though fortunately he hasn't yet traced gossip's source directly to your eager ears. Your next chore leads conveniently toward palace gardens, a romantic hotspot, lush foliage providing perfect concealment for stolen meetings. Carrying baskets filled with freshly cut flowers intended for royal chambers. Your eyes discreetly scan shadowy pathways, ears alert for whispers confirming earlier gossip. Quiet rustling suddenly catches your attention, nearby palms shaking softly, voices murmuring urgently, yet discreetly. Your heart races guiltily. Eavesdropping here risks severe punishment, yet curiosity overrules caution. Concealing yourself carefully behind flowering shrubs, you strain eagerly to overhear snippets drifting tantalizingly close. "Amenhotep, we must be careful," Lady Iset whispers urgently, voice trembling gently. "Love demands bravery," Amenhotep responds passionately, words dripping dramatically. You suppress laughter softly. Clearly, Prince Amenhotep enjoys theatrical romance, perhaps too enthusiastically. Yet beneath amusement lies genuine worry. Such reckless passion rarely ends well. Palace protocol forbids royal affairs involving lesser nobility, potentially sparking political consequences neither lover appears sufficiently considering. Their whispered conversation continues intensely, hearts clearly oblivious to servant hiding nearby. You briefly consider discreetly leaving, but fascination holds you motionless, eager for further details. Suddenly footsteps approach hurriedly. Guards patrol gardens regularly, particularly suspicious of rustling foliage indicating illicit meetings. Panic flares briefly as Amenhotep and Iset swiftly disperse silently, leaving you hiding awkwardly alone, behind flowers, clutching baskets nervously. Guards pass thankfully unaware, though your heartbeat pounds audibly. Certain imminent discovery awaits. Breathing finally steadies gradually. You hurriedly resume chores, discreetly, grateful narrowly escaping severe punishment. Returning indoors later, your mind races restlessly. Witnessing palace intrigue firsthand feels thrilling, yet incredibly risky. Whispers swirl everywhere now, servants speculating wildly about romance details, potential outcomes, and inevitable consequences. You remain discreetly silent, smiling knowingly, amused slightly, knowing palace gossip lacks accurate facts you secretly possess. Even Nacht notices palace whispers, increasing dramatically, scowling perpetually deeper. He calls servants sharply, demanding source identification, though thankfully, gossip's origin remains safely anonymous. Your secret feels simultaneously thrilling and dangerously burdensome. Palace intrigue clearly demands discretion, exceeding typical servant expectations. Evening duties thankfully distract briefly, assisting Sibni's kitchen preparations again, aromas comforting amidst restless palace atmosphere. Sebni notices your distraction, raising eyebrows curiously. Romantic thoughts today? He teases lightly, unaware how ironically accurate his words are. Laughing sheepishly, you quickly dismiss suspicions, focusing diligently on culinary tasks demanding attention. Yet privately, romance drama lingers persistently, thoughts circling constantly around lovers' risky meetings, potential consequences awaiting discovery, and unavoidable palace upheaval inevitably resulting from such daring rebellion. Returning exhaustedly towards sleeping quarters later, palace silence feels unusually oppressive tonight. Shadows deeper, darkness heavier, whispers lurking persistently beneath surface quietness. Palace romance, despite initial amusement, clearly risks unsettling delicate balance, maintained carefully through protocol, tradition, discretion. Your involvement, however minor, risks unintended consequences extending dangerously beyond mere gossip entertainment. Settling restlessly onto sleeping mat, sleep evades stubbornly tonight. Palace romance haunting thoughts persistently. Dreams drift towards shadowy garden meetings, whispered confessions echoing softly beneath flowering palms. Hearts risking recklessly beneath moonlit secrecy. Even dreaming, anxiety lingers persistently, understanding instinctively such palace passions rarely remain hidden permanently. Yet beneath restless worry lies quiet fascination still, secretly captivated deeply by romance's universal allure, even amidst dangerous palace intrigue. Love's forbidden nature intensifies allure powerfully, captivating servant imagination despite clearly understanding inevitable consequences awaiting discovery. Palace servants secretly adore romance drama, though publicly denouncing reckless rebellion loudly for palace survival's sake. Smiling sleepily despite lingering worries, your dreams finally soften gradually, romantic whispers fading gently, anxiety replaced reassuringly by comforting darkness enveloping gently. Tomorrow inevitably brings fresh palace intrigue, new whispers urgently demanding discreet attention. But tonight, despite restless uncertainty, quiet amusement gently lingers warmly, understanding secretly palace life, despite strictness and tension, occasionally reveals universal humanity beneath glittering facade, even through risky romantic rebellion. Sleep finally welcomes peacefully, dreams whispering softly of secret meetings beneath flowering palms, palace romance drama continuing endlessly, servant ears forever eager for whispered details drifting gently through palace halls. You're barely halfway through your breakfast, just a few bites of yesterday's leftover barley cake and some surprisingly bitter dates, when Nacht summons you with his usual scowl. "The animals," he grunts. "Go?" "The animals?" you repeat slowly, wondering if he means pests in the storerooms again, or if this is something new. He offers no further explanation, of course, simply gestures vaguely toward a side corridor and disappears into the crowd of servants like a scowling ghost. You wipe your hands and follow the vague directions, only to arrive at a place you've never been. A small sun-washed courtyard, surrounded by high walls and the unmistakable smell of wild things. This, you quickly learn, is where Pharaoh's exotic pets are kept. Yes, Pharaoh has pets, not just cats, though he has those too, dozens of them, all sleek and gold-collared, lounging like they own the kingdom. No, Pharaoh collects creatures from across Egypt and beyond, gifts from visiting kings, tributes from distant lands. You've heard rumours, of course, but you assumed they were exaggerated. They weren't. A baboon stares at you from a perch near the gate, chewing something thoughtfully. Nearby, a desert fox naps in a puddle of shade, and over in the far corner, beneath a canopy of palm fronds, a sleek young leopard lies curled like an oversized house cat, blinking slowly in the morning sun. Historically, it's well documented that Egyptian royals kept animals not just for companionship, but as status symbols. Baboons were sacred to Thoth. Lions symbolized power. Even crocodiles, if properly managed, were revered. Historians still argue whether these animals lived like pampered pets or were simply ceremonial tokens, barely tolerated by staff. Your first task, clean the enclosures. Of course it is. Under the supervision of an older caretaker named Jedi, who seems to have survived both animals and time itself. You begin carefully mucking out the baboon's pen. The baboon, for its part, watches your every move with unnerving intelligence. When you drop a bronze scoop, it claps mockingly. You can't prove it was sarcasm, but you're pretty sure it was sarcasm. You'll want to stay away from the leopard, Jedi mutters as you pass, mostly calm until it's not. Excellent. Next, you fetch fresh water from the palace cisterns and pour it into shallow basins. The foxes drink first, dainty and careful. The baboon follows, flinging water at you before taking a dramatic slurp. You stare blankly as droplets hit your tunic. Jedi chuckles. Likes you, apparently. You can't tell if that's good or extremely concerning. By midday, the heat is blistering, and the leopard is watching you more closely than you'd prefer. Its spotted tail flicks lazily in the dust. You're tasked with placing fresh meat in a bronze dish. Cutlets that were probably luxury fare yesterday, but now serve as royal leopard snacks. You approach slowly, doing your best not to smell like fear. The leopard lifts its head, sniffs once, then yawns. You freeze mid-step. It stretches, stands, and pads right past you to its food, brushing against your hip with casual menace. You try not to breathe. Don't run, Jedi calls lazily from behind a palm. Cats chase running things. Helpful. Once the meat is delivered, the leopard ignores you entirely. You back away in slow motion, swearing internally never to look another house cat in the eye again. Later, as you help refill feed bowls for birds, cranes, ibises, and one grumpy heron, you reflect on just how surreal your day has become. It's hard to believe that this courtyard, hidden just beyond the polished halls of Pharaoh's throne room, houses what amounts to a miniature zoo. And yet, here it is. Beating wings, chittering baboons, slinking shadows, and all. Your favourite, by surprise, becomes the cats. Not the dangerous ones, but the sleek domestic creatures that roam freely around the palace, tails held high, eyes judging everyone equally. One such cat, a grey tabby with one torn ear, follows you for hours, eventually curling up on a sunny stone bench as you rest nearby. You've heard stories of cats being mummified and honoured with their own tombs. You're beginning to believe they deserve it. You've done well, Jedi says later, startling you. You've got a calmness about you. The animals like that? You blink. No one's ever told you you've got a talent for animal care. Then again, maybe they just appreciate that you haven't screamed or fled. Yet, as dusk settles and shadows stretch across the courtyard, Jedi hands you a cool fig drink and nods toward the gate. Come back tomorrow. They'll need feeding again. You hesitate. You're not sure if this is a compliment or a punishment. But as you pass the baboon, who offers a solemn nod, and the leopard, who ignores you completely, you feel an odd sense of calm. Caring for Pharaoh's animals might be dangerous, unpredictable, and oddly aromatic, but it's also peaceful in its own chaotic way. You trudge back to your quarters, clothes dusty, hands scratched but strangely content. Unlike the polished perfection of palace chambers, this job felt more honest. The animals don't care about protocol. They don't judge linen folding or bowing posture. They simply want food, water, and to be left alone. An ambition you can deeply respect. As you lie on your mat that night, the soft sound of purring cats drifting through the corridors, you smile. You've survived baboon mockery and leopard proximity. Not bad for a day in Pharaoh's palace. Tomorrow, who knows what task Nakit will assign, but you secretly hope it involves animals again, even if it comes with another splash of baboon water to the face. The morning feels oddly still, unnaturally quiet. Even the cats seem subdued, slinking through palace corridors without their usual arrogant flair. You know something's off before you even see Nakt's grim face. Judgment Day, he mutters, not bothering to explain further. He doesn't need to. You've heard about it in passing, when complaints are brought before Pharaoh or his appointed judges, and justice is dispensed. It's rare, but when it happens, the palace tightens like a drawn bow. Everyone walks a little straighter. Everyone speaks a little softer. Because when justice is served in Pharaoh's court, no one wants to be on the menu. You're directed to help prepare the Hall of Judgment, a long columned chamber lined with gold-trimmed statues and eye-piercing murals of Mahat, goddess of truth and balance. Servants whisper nervously as they sweep the polished floor, straighten chairs, and lay offerings before the goddess's likeness, ostrich feather included. The feather of Maat, symbol of divine truth, is often used to judge the weight of souls in the afterlife. But today, it's used metaphorically, weighing the guilt of the living. Your hands tremble slightly as you adjust the fine linen covering the central judgment table. One wrong move here could be mistaken for disrespect, not just to Pharaoh, but to Maat herself. And you've already had your fill of God-related panic since that temple ritual back in Section 4. The chamber fills quickly. Nobles arrive first, their jewellery clinking softly, followed by scribes clutching scrolls and styluses. Armed guards stand motionless at every column, eyes scanning like hawks. Then comes the accused, a trembling servant named Dedu, flanked by 2 soldiers. He's pale, eyes wide, clearly terrified. You recognise him vaguely. He worked in the storage rooms. Rumour says he stole something. A few fruits, maybe? A silver ring? Or perhaps just knowledge he wasn't supposed to have. Historians still argue whether palace thefts were always crimes of greed or sometimes just desperate acts of survival. You retreat into the corner, silent and unnoticed, exactly how a servant should be when justice unfolds. A senior official steps forward, announcing the charges in a booming voice that echoes through the chamber. Dedu falls to his knees, babbling denials, invoking every god from Ra to Thoth. Pharaoh isn't present today. He rarely oversees such matters personally, but his appointed judge, High Vizier Intef, takes the place of authority. He wears the emblem of Maat around his neck and carries a staff that doubles as both symbol and threat. Witnesses are called. A storehouse scribe testifies with an impressively neutral tone. The scroll showed 5 amphorae of oil, he states. Only 4 were there the next day. You frown slightly. 1 jar of oil, that's the offence. Then again, in this palace, every drop of luxury is measured with near-paranoid precision. The vizier nods gravely, asking sharp questions. Dedu shakes under the pressure, stammering. You feel a pang of sympathy. It's the same stammer you'd probably have if put in front of palace law. Suddenly the vizier gestures toward Mahat's feather. A symbolic moment. Dedu must speak once more and swear his truth before the goddess. He swallows hard and proclaims his innocence, voice trembling. His hands hover near the feather, but do not touch it. A long silence follows. Finally, the vizier makes his decision. Dedu, he says firmly, the gods seek balance. Today, you're found lacking. A harsh sentence is delivered. Removal from palace service, exile from Thebes, no possibility of return. It could have been worse, much worse. Palace punishments range from public flogging to, let's just say, disappearing quietly. You watch as Dedu is dragged out, his expression somewhere between relief and despair. You're struck by how quickly justice moves here. No appeals, no second chances, just swift judgment and silence. Afterward, as the chamber empties, you help roll up the ceremonial cloth, your hands feeling oddly heavy. It's not your judgment day, but witnessing it leaves a lingering chill. Justice in Pharaoh's palace isn't about fairness as much as balance. Mart must be satisfied, even if it means sacrificing a life to restore harmony. As you exit the chamber, you catch sight of Nakt watching from a shadowed alcove. He says nothing, but his expression is softer than usual. Careful, he mutters finally. Today it was Dedu. Tomorrow, he doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't have to. That evening, the palace is quieter than usual. Conversations are whispered. Eyes flick toward corners. Even Pharaoh's musicians play softer songs. You return to your sleeping quarters, exhausted not from labour, but from the tension coiled inside your chest like a rope pulled too tight. You lie on your mat, staring at the ceiling's painted stars, thinking of Mahat, her feather, and the weight of truth. In the dark, you consider how easily your own fate could have mirrored Dedu's. A miscounted jar of oil, a misplaced scroll, a stolen glance during a ritual. Palace life is not just about doing your duties, it's about appearing balanced, calm, obedient. It's about knowing when to speak, and more importantly, when to stay invisible. Sleep doesn't come easily tonight. The image of Dedu lingers, his footsteps echoing as he's dragged away from everything he knew. But eventually, fatigue wins. You drift into uneasy dreams, where feathers float through the air and whispered judgments pass without warning. There's no ceremony to it, no formal announcement, no majestic trumpet blast echoing down marble corridors. Just Nakt shoving a pick into your hands before sunrise and grunting, "You're with the construction crew today." Your arms already ache in anticipation. Pharaoh, in all his divine wisdom, has decided another monument must rise, an obelisk perhaps, or a gateway covered in glorious hieroglyphs celebrating his victories and divine status. The truth is, Pharaoh loves to build. It's how he writes his name across the desert itself. Every stone, every wall is a page in the epic poem of his ego. And today, you're helping write it. You follow a caravan of servants and workers out of the main palace complex to the construction site, just beyond the city walls. The sun is barely peeking over the horizon, yet sweat already dampens your back. Dust clings to everything. Skin, tunic, thoughts. You squint ahead at what looks like organised chaos. Dozens of workers hauling blocks, shouting over clanging tools, and the deep, rhythmic thud of pounding chisels. Your first task is simple. Move limestone rubble from one side of the site to the other. It sounds absurd. Why not just build where the stone already is? But of course that would be too easy. And palace servants are never asked to do what makes sense. You trudge back and forth under the glaring sun. Stones digging into your palms, your shoulders screaming by the third trip. "Keep moving," barks a foreman, whose voice could strip paint. "Stone doesn't walk itself." Nearby, 2 oxen pull a wooden sledge bearing a massive block meant for the monument's base. Men strain at ropes greased with animal fat to reduce friction. It's impressive how many people it takes to move just one piece of Pharaoh's pride. You pause to watch, mesmerised by the coordination, the sheer, absurd scale of it all. 1 block, 50 men. Historically, construction wasn't slave labour in the sense many assume. Workers were often paid, even honoured, especially when building temples or tombs. But for palace servants like you, it's just another gruelling assignment. Historians still argue whether this kind of duty was considered punishment or simply part of the experience. Lunch, if you can call it that, is a palmful of lentils and hard bread shared in the shadow of a half-built pillar. You chew slowly, mouth dry, dust working its way into every bite. Amos sits beside you, arms just as scratched and grimy as yours. He nudges you with his elbow. I heard Pharaoh's having his face carved into the top, so the gods can admire him from the sky. You snort. If I were a god, I'd file a complaint. Amos grins. Careful, the statue might hear you. After your brief respite, you're assigned to help carve transport rollers, wooden cylinders that support moving the heavier stones. It sounds simple, but shaping logs with dull copper tools is like shaving a boulder with a spoon. Your hands blister almost immediately. You're positioned near a team of artisans, chipping away at one of the obelisk's side panels. The head artisan, a wiry man with ink-stained fingers and a temper to match, paints red guidelines onto the limestone, preparing for hieroglyphs that will declare Pharaoh, son of Ra, master of both lands, lord of eternal victory, among other modest titles. You marvel at the craftsmanship. The symbols dance across stone with grace. Owls, eyes, ankhs, reeds, suns. It's beautiful, in that bold, godlike way all palace architecture tends to be. You wonder if anyone will ever see your own name carved into anything. Probably not, unless it's scribbled in invisible ink on the back of a chamber pot. Late in the day, your final task is stacking mud bricks around the new foundation. The mortar is a mixture of sand, clay, and chopped straw, with just enough added flavour to make it unpleasant. The bricks are still warm from the kilns, but heavy and slick with slurry. By now, you can barely lift your arms. You pause briefly to wipe your forehead, but a sharp whistle from the foreman snaps you back into motion. No rest until sundown. By the time the sun dips low, the sky bleeding into orange and red, the monument looks, well, like a pile of oversized rocks. The decorative glory is a long way off, but it's a start. You step back, squinting through the sweat and grime, and for a brief moment feel something like pride. This monument will last long after you're gone, long after even Pharaoh returns to dust. Tourists, assuming Egypt ever gets tourists, will stare at it, amazed. And somewhere, buried deep beneath it, will be the fingerprint you left behind on a single stone. As you limp back toward the palace, shoulders aching, dust crusted under your fingernails, you wonder if this is what glory feels like. Exhaustion mixed with blisters and a thin coating of clay. Nacht sees you returning, grunts once and nods. Not praise exactly, but something close to acknowledgement. For Nacht, that's basically a love letter. You collapse on your mat that night without even rinsing the dust from your arms. Your legs twitch involuntarily as sleep creeps in, every muscle still buzzing from exertion. In your dreams, stones float through the air effortlessly, stacking themselves with supernatural ease while Pharaoh watches and nods, satisfied. Too bad dreams aren't reality. Tomorrow, you're scheduled for another round. Sweet Ra, help your back. Your arms still ache from yesterday's stone-hauling marathon, and you're moving slower than a desert tortoise with a sunburn. So when Nacht appears and says, "You're headed to the valley today," your first thought is, tomb duty? Now, I just got feeling back in my fingers. Still, arguing with Nacht is like arguing with a brick wall, only the wall is less sarcastic. So you gather your things and follow a small caravan, winding down through dusty roads and rock-cut paths, away from the palace's grandeur and toward the place where Pharaoh will one day sleep forever. The Valley of the Kings is a strange place, quiet, oppressive, sacred. It stretches across craggy limestone hills, its dry air humming with a tension you can't quite explain. Tombs dot the landscape like hidden secrets, many of them already carved deep into the rock. You're not here for treasure or glory, though. You're here to help haul tools and prepare supplies for the artisans and workers chiseling Pharaoh's eternal house. "Don't touch anything," says one of the tomb workers, an older man named Pashedu, with sun-leathered skin and piercing eyes. "Especially not the paintings. They watch. You laugh quietly, nervously. He doesn't. Your job today is surprisingly calm. You help carry clay pots filled with coloured pigments, reds from ochre, blues from ground azurite, greens from malachite. These will be used to decorate Pharaoh's chamber walls with intricate scenes of gods and afterlife adventures. Each pot feels fragile in your hands, more precious than gold in its own way. Inside the tomb, it's cool and silent. The entrance slopes downward like the mouth of a sleeping lion, and you can't help but feel like you're being swallowed whole by the earth. Torches flicker along rough walls as you follow the painter's crew, illuminating half-finished murals, Horus guiding souls, Osiris weighing hearts, Anubis lurking nearby with his jackal's grin. One worker is brushing detail onto a depiction of the Field of Reeds, Egyptian paradise. Another smooths a patch of wet plaster with a reed comb. They barely glance at you, focused entirely on preserving Pharaoh's legacy for eternity. "Careful with that," someone barks as you place a jar too close to the wall. "You want to be buried down here permanently?" You mutter an apology, stepping back quickly. The idea of being entombed prematurely, under Pharaoh's nose for all time, is less appealing than usual. Historians still argue whether these tomb workers truly believed in the afterlife or simply painted what they were paid to. But looking around, watching the quiet reverence in their movements, you feel like they believe. Or maybe they just don't want to take chances. Later, you're sent topside again to assist a group carving hieroglyphs onto limestone slabs. It's less glamorous than it sounds. You're not chiseling sacred names, you're sanding rough edges, hauling dusty tools, and holding umbrellas to shield senior artisans from the sun. One older craftsman, named Mena, beckons you closer and points to a carving in progress. "See this?" he says, tracing the form of a scarab. "It's not just art, it's magic. Every line, every symbol, it's protection. For Pharaoh, for us, maybe even for you." You nod, unsure whether he's being poetic or serious. "Make it wrong," he adds, "and you curse everyone." You take one step backward, just to be safe. As the sun rises higher, the valley blazes with heat. Shadows vanish, even your thoughts feel scorched. You retreat to the shade of a large rock near a half-finished shaft, drinking from a cracked clay cup filled with lukewarm barley water. You've never felt so dry in your life. Nearby, a group of workers shares a whispered story about a cursed tomb deeper in the hills, one where a servant once disturbed a sacred jar and vanished days later, found wandering the desert, eyes wide, speech gone. Another swears the statues inside breathe when no one's watching. You raise an eyebrow but say nothing. Between yesterday's baboon splash fight and today's ghost stories, your tolerance for palace weirdness is expanding rapidly. In the late afternoon, you're permitted to enter a deeper chamber to deliver incense and oil. It's newly carved, smooth walls gleaming with fresh paint. The air inside smells faintly of cedar and resin. On one wall, a nearly finished scene shows Pharaoh being led by Ra through the stars. Another features a giant serpent coiled protectively around the solar boat. You stand silently, overwhelmed. It's beautiful, awe-inspiring, terrifying. You imagine future generations lighting torches to see these walls, marvelling at what you helped carry in, what your hands touched. No one will remember your name, but your fingerprints are here, hidden in plaster, trapped beneath paint. As you leave the tomb, blinking into the light, Peshedu nods approvingly. "You didn't mess anything up," he says. "Good, that's rare." You smile, unsure whether to feel honoured or insulted, maybe both. By evening, the caravan returns to Thebes. Your skin is coated in dust, your nose stained faintly with pigment. You haven't done anything heroic, but you feel included, like you've touched something larger than yourself. Pharaoh's tomb won't be finished for years, decades even, but your contribution is already sealed into its walls, invisible but real. You collapse onto your mat with a sigh. Today wasn't glamorous, but it was important. Tomb duty is quiet, meticulous, sacred, and occasionally spooky. In your dreams, gods walk beside you through painted corridors, scarabs hum ancient lullabies, and Pharaoh's voice echoes from stone walls, thanking you in a tongue older than time. You awaken to a faint golden gleam filtering through the slatted shutters of your chamber, and for the first time in weeks, your muscles aren't protesting the mere act of breathing. No stone hauling, no tomb duty dust storms, at least not yet. Instead, today's assignment has a sheen to it, quite literally. You're on treasure duty. It sounds glamorous, doesn't it? Treasure duty, like you'll be draped in gold and lounging beside Pharaoh's personal jewellery box while sipping chilled lotus wine. Spoiler, it's a lot more polishing and a lot less lounging. Nakt, who seems to smell joy and extinguish it on principle, hands you a basket of tools, soft cloths, beeswax paste, powdered pumice, and a brush made from woven papyrus. Don't scratch anything, he says sharply. Last servant who did is still scrubbing chamber pots in Nubia. You're not sure if that's a joke or a threat. With Nakt, it could be both. You're led into one of the palace vaults, a chamber of stone and shadow, where the scent of old wood, beeswax and incense hangs thick in the air. Torches flicker, throwing gold into motion, and oh, there is so much gold, stacked on tables, hanging from wooden racks, resting in padded chests, necklaces, pectorals, goblets, circlets, carved statues, even golden sandals. You swear one headdress looks heavy enough to break Pharaoh's neck, and yet he wears it like it's made of feathers. Your job? Clean them, all of them. You start with a necklace shaped like a falcon, wings outspread, inlaid with lapis lazuli and turquoise. It's breathtaking, and somehow you're supposed to make it shinier. You wipe gently, turning it this way and that under the torchlight, watching it catch fire in the glow. A scribe nearby records each piece as it's handled, his stylus scratching on papyrus like an overworked cricket. Don't swap anything, he mutters without looking up. They'll notice. You glance at him insulted. I'm not planning to, he raises an eyebrow. Everyone says that at first. Well then, that's comforting. As the morning stretches on, you move from piece to piece, cleaning rings shaped like cobras, delicate gold earrings that once belonged to Pharaoh's grandmother, and a ceremonial dagger whose blade gleams with such icy sharpness that it probably hasn't dulled since it was forged during the reign of a king long forgotten by most. You learn quickly that gold doesn't stay golden on its own. It dulls, it tarnishes, it gathers dust, fingerprints, and odd smudges that somehow travel through velvet-lined boxes. And of course it's not just gold. There are precious stones that need gentle brushing, ivory that needs conditioning, silver that's especially picky and turns green if stored too close to... What was it? Salt? Copper? Fish? You don't remember, but you pretend like you do. You're wiping a particularly gaudy goblet when Ahimo sneaks in with a grin on his face. Enjoying your new life as a royal magpie? You raise the goblet dramatically. Only the finest bird bath for His Majesty, he laughs. Wait till you get to the mirror chamber. The what? Apparently, Pharaoh has an entire room filled with mirrors. Polished copper ones, bronze ones, obsidian even. Some are shaped like the Eye of Horus, others are so large it takes 2 servants just to lift them onto their mounts. Your job, naturally, is to make sure they shine. You follow a servant into this mirror chamber and nearly trip over your own reflection. Mirrors lean against every wall, reflecting you back over and over from slightly different angles. You look tired in all of them, a little crooked in some. One mirror near the corner makes your nose look heroic, though, so that's something. Cleaning mirrors is no joke. The copper ones are the worst, temperamental, sensitive, quick to show every smear. As you polish, you imagine Pharaoh examining himself each morning, checking the line of his eyeliner, the arrangement of his ceremonial beard, the fluff of his wig. It's oddly comforting to know even god kings worry about presentation. And then there's the strange stuff. One treasure, if you can call it that, is a carved hippo figurine made of faience, grinning far too broadly for your comfort. You wipe its ears carefully and try not to take its smug little smile personally. Another object, a fan made of ostrich feathers and gold, is so delicate you're told not to touch it at all. Just stand nearby and admire it respectfully, which feels like the best task you've had all week. You also catch sight of something curious, a hollow gold box, intricately carved with symbols you don't recognize. It has no lid, no apparent function. You ask the scribe what it's for. No one knows, he replies, barely glancing up. Might be ceremonial, might be a decoy, might be cursed. Fantastic. By late afternoon, your shoulders are sore from hours of careful movement. Your hands smell like beeswax, and you've inhaled enough gold dust to qualify as partially metallic. But you've also seen some of the most beautiful objects ever created. Objects no one outside the palace will ever lay eyes on. You pause at the end of the day to admire a statue of Bastet, the cat goddess, cast in solid gold with emerald eyes. She seems to stare at you knowingly, tail curled, head tilted. You nod at her respectfully. She approves. Probably. As you return to your chamber, passing guards and yawning cats alike, you realise that treasure duty wasn't just about sparkle and polish. It was a reminder. Pharaoh's power isn't just in armies or monuments. It's in objects, symbols, things that speak loudly even in silence. Every necklace, every mirror, every gleaming trinket declares, I am eternal. And you, humble servant, are the one who makes sure that message stays shiny. You fall asleep dreaming of gold, and in your dreams, you're polishing a crown that never quite loses its last smudge. Typical. You're summoned before breakfast, a sure sign it's going to be that kind of day. Nact's waiting with a face like carved sandstone, and an expression that suggests either deep irritation or maybe constipation. You never quite know with him. New orders, he says. You're to accompany the scroll bearers to the West Wing. You raise an eyebrow. Scrolls, Nact nods once. Diplomatic records, and keep your mouth shut. A new level of dread prickles your spine. The West Wing isn't somewhere servants wander casually. It's where visiting dignitaries meet with Pharaoh's advisors, where treaties are signed, threats exchanged, and secrets whispered between bites of roasted duck and honeyed figs. You've never been allowed closer than the outer corridor. But today, for reasons unknown, and probably unfortunate, you've been pulled into the orbit of politics. Your job, as it turns out, is to carry a reed-wrapped bundle of sealed papyrus scrolls from the palace archive to the council chamber. Nothing glamorous, just walking with parchment, but you walk differently when what you're carrying could spark a war. The chamber is already busy when you arrive. Scribes stand ready at small desks. Guards flank the entrance, eyes sharp. You're directed to a quiet corner beside a large ornamental plant and told, firmly, to stand there and breathe quietly. So, naturally, you listen harder than ever. The scrolls you delivered are laid out before Pharaoh's advisors, maps inked with foreign territories, records of tribute, letters from Nubian envoys, and a particularly thick scroll sealed with a heavy wax stamp. It's opened carefully and read aloud. You catch snatches of it. Cattle infected. Marriage proposal withdrawn. Disputed border along the eastern ridge. You try to look uninterested like the plant next to you, but you're absorbing every syllable. Then a voice, calm, commanding, says, "This can't leave the chamber." You freeze. Another advisor speaks, quieter now. "If the Hittites find out we intercepted this message, they'll—" "I know," the first one interrupts. "That's why the courier won't be returning." You blink. Wait, what? You've just stumbled into something far bigger than your usual service assignments. An intercepted message. A diplomatic courier who won't be returning. You feel a cold knot settle in your stomach. This is the kind of thing people don't survive knowing. You adjust your posture, try to breathe evenly, and resist the urge to sprint straight back to the laundry courtyard. Fortunately, the officials are too wrapped in the scrolls to notice your sudden stillness. Eventually, one of them waves you forward again. You gather up the now empty document case, careful not to let your hands shake, and back away with slow, practiced reverence. The moment you step out of the chamber, the door slams shut behind you. You exhale for the first time in what feels like hours. Outside, you make your way back to the archive room with legs that feel like water reeds. Along the way, you pass a cluster of servants whispering excitedly. Did you hear? The Hittite ambassador left at dawn. No farewell ceremony, no gifts. That's bad, that's really bad. And Pharaoh's guards have doubled. Historians still debate the nature of some of the Egyptian-Hittite tensions. Treaties were signed, sure, but not always honoured. Spying, sabotage, and diplomatic insults were common. Whether Pharaoh's officials were cunning negotiators or just lucky remains up for debate. You suspect luck had little to do with it. Back in the archive, the chief scribe looks up and says, "You are fast." You nod mutely, hand him the empty scroll case, and try not to show how much your brain is on fire. The rest of the day, you're given busy work. Sorting scrolls, dusting shelves, polishing a ceremonial inkwell shaped like Thoth's ibis head. It's meant to be calming, but every whisper you hear, every look exchanged between scribes, feels heavier now. There's a story here, one that could change things, and you were in the room. You, the servant usually tasked with scraping honey off floor tiles. Later, as you pass through the outer courtyard, you see the Nubian delegation preparing to leave. Quickly. No fanfare, no farewell gift ceremony, just tight expressions and rapid packing. A high-ranking guard oversees their departure, eyes scanning every movement. You don't know exactly what happened in that chamber, but you know this much. Something's unravelling behind the scenes, and you got a thread. That night, as you return to your mat, you feel the usual exhaustion, but it's mixed with adrenaline now. You stare at the ceiling, wondering just how much of what happens in Pharaoh's palace goes unrecorded, undocumented, whispered only by servants who keep their heads down and their ears open. You remember the voice saying, "This can't leave the chamber." It has. At least it has with you. In your dream, you're running through endless scroll-filled hallways, chased by men with wax seals for eyes and styluses like daggers. When you wake, your blanket is twisted like a papyrus roll. You untangle yourself, heart still racing, and whisper a promise into the dark. You'll never repeat what you heard. Not aloud, not even to Amos, but the knowledge is there, tucked inside you, like a sealed scroll waiting to catch fire. There's a strange silence over the palace this morning, the kind that presses against your chest before you even open your eyes. You know something's wrong, and when Nakut finds you before sunrise, his jaw tight and his voice low, that feeling solidifies into certainty. "Pharaoh is ill," he says. Just those 3 words, but in the palace they echo like thunder. The effect is immediate and unsettling. Servants move faster but speak less. Guards whisper instead of bark. Even the cats, somehow, seem to tread more cautiously, as though sensing the imbalance rippling through the gilded walls. Pharaoh, divine ruler, son of Ra, embodiment of Horus on earth, is mortal after all. And everyone's pretending they're not terrified. You're assigned to help prepare Pharaoh's chamber for the court physicians. That might sound helpful, but really it's just glorified tidying. Fresh linens, clean water bowls, incense lit to ease breathing and possibly cover up the scent of impending doom, and delicate oils that you're told must not spill, not because they're sacred, but because they cost more than your entire extended family. You enter the private quarters with care, and for once you don't dare glance at the ornaments or golden furniture. The chamber is quiet. Too quiet. Pharaoh is behind a curtain, unseen, attended by a small army of priests, physicians, and family members. His breath wheezes softly, irregular, and it sends a chill up your spine. The court physician, a short, stooped man named Naberman, stands nearby with an armful of scrolls and a deeply troubled expression. He mutters to himself while flipping through the ancient texts, trying to match symptoms with cures. You overhear snatches of it. Chills without fever, humours out of balance, swollen joints. You don't understand most of it, but it doesn't sound good. Pharaoh's favoured wife, Queen Sitya, sits nearby, her face calm but her hands clenched tightly in her lap. You lower your gaze quickly when you see her. This is not a time to be seen. Just heard? Barely. Suddenly there's shouting from the hallway. A young page crashes into the room, breathless. The Nubian healer has arrived. Everyone goes still. Ah yes, the Nubian healer. You've heard the rumours? Supposedly trained in desert medicine, herbal lore, and strange spirit rituals. Some say he cured a noble of blindness by whispering into her ears. Others claim he brought a cat back from death, though knowing cats it might have just been sleeping dramatically. Within moments the Nubian healer enters the room, tall, wrapped in linen dyed with deep reds and ochres, bearing a staff adorned with feathers and copper charms. His eyes scan the chamber slowly, and then, without fanfare, he moves toward Pharaoh's bed. Nebamun protests immediately. "We've already tried." The healer raises one hand, and astonishingly, Nebamun goes silent. You keep cleaning, head low, cloth in hand, but you're watching, always watching. The healer begins his ritual. He burns an herb you've never smelled before, sharp, earthy, with a touch of something almost metallic. He chants softly in a language you can't place, and while his words are unfamiliar, the cadence soothes the room. Even Pharaoh's breathing evens slightly. He applies a poultice of mashed fig, garlic, and, oddly, crushed beetles to Pharaoh's chest. A fringe remedy, no doubt. One of those strange treatments historians still debate the efficacy of. Did it actually work? Or was it just the placebo effect and a lot of dramatic chanting? Honestly, you don't care. If it gets Pharaoh breathing again, let the man use beetle jam and moonlight for all you care. The Queen watches closely. The court priests exchange worried glances. Nebamun is clearly furious, but biting his tongue hard enough to probably require his own healer. You're sent to retrieve more herbs from the palace apothecary, a place that smells like every root, resin and mould under the sun. Shelves grown with clay jars labelled in symbols you don't dare try to read. The old woman who runs the place hands you what you need, muttering something about donkey bile infusions and cleansing the liver through the soles. You hurry back, cradling the bundle tightly. If you drop this and Pharaoh dies, you're pretty sure you'll be offered as a ceremonial apology. When you return, the healer is speaking directly to the Queen. His voice is low, but you catch the words, "will take time and must rest completely." You place the herbs quietly on a side table and slip back toward the door. Before leaving, though, you glance once toward the curtain. You don't see Pharaoh's face, only the shape beneath linen breathing shallowly, and you realise, if he doesn't wake, this entire world might shift. Every hallway, every custom, every task, every servant's position, all tied to the man behind that curtain. By nightfall, the palace is a different place. Candles burn low in every corridor. Guards whisper instead of laugh. Priests pace. You overhear a junior scribe mumble, "We may need to prepare the death rituals." Your breath catches. They say pharaohs are gods, but you're starting to see the cracks in that divinity. Later, Amos finds you sitting outside your quarters, knees pulled to your chest. He flops beside you, hands clasped behind his head, and stares at the stars overhead. "He'll either recover or he won't," he says softly. "And if he doesn't, well, we'll still scrub floors, just under new management." You nod slowly. It's a grim truth, but it's also kind of comforting. Sleep doesn't come easily that night. You lie awake, wondering what tomorrow will bring. A recovery, a funeral, a coronation. You've been in Pharaoh's palace long enough to know that power doesn't disappear. It just changes hands. And when it does, servants like you need to move fast, keep your heads down, and listen very, very carefully. Dawn arrives slowly, cautiously, as if it, too, isn't sure whether Pharaoh has survived the night. When Nakt appears in your doorway, with a groan and a half-eaten pomegranate in hand, you brace yourself. "You're going with the healer," he says. You blink. "The Nubian?" He nods, already walking away. He needs ingredients, you're the feet. Not the honour you might have hoped for, but at least it's not tomb duty again. You find the healer in the palace garden, crouched beside a patch of purple lotus. He greets you with a nod and a single word. Come. And just like that, you're off. You trail him through back corridors and servants' gates until you're out on the streets of Thebes proper. A rare event for someone like you. The city buzzes with life, markets opening, hawkers shouting, donkeys braying, priests chanting their dawn prayers. The world doesn't pause for Pharaoh's sickness, you realise. Not out here. Your first stop is a spice vendor nestled between a copper shop and a butcher's stall. The healer barters quietly for anise, fenugreek, and dried rose petals. For balance, he says, handing you the bundle. Balance of what, you ask? Inside. Vague, cryptic, just what you'd expect from someone who cures royalty with beetles and humming. Next, you make your way to a healer's hut on the Nile's edge, where baskets of dried fish, eel skins, and herbs dangle from the ceiling like a strange apothecary wind chime. The air inside is thick with the scent of resin and decay. Here, he selects frankincense resin, charcoal powder, and, disturbingly, a desiccated frog. You do not ask what that's for. He pays with a handful of bronze rings, the kind palace servants aren't supposed to even look at, let alone touch. You make a mental note to avoid ever crossing this man. As you help carry his finds back toward the palace, you notice something strange. People on the street are talking, not just about Pharaoh being sick, but about what comes next. Already, merchants discuss whether Prince Amenhotep is ready to rule. Some say he's too impulsive. Others think the queen herself might step in as regent. You overhear one man mutter, "Maybe it's the gods sending a warning." Historians still argue how much the common folk understood about palace politics. But listening to the murmurs today, you get the sense they understood plenty. Back inside the palace, the healer brings his strange supplies to Pharaoh's chamber. You're not allowed inside this time. The doors are shut. Incense burns. Priests chant low and constant. It feels less like healing now and more like bargaining, with gods who drive a hard deal. You're reassigned temporarily to the healer's hut within the palace, a small side chamber turned makeshift apothecary. The place is a mess. Bundles of herbs hang from the ceiling. Clay bowls hold half-ground powders. Scrolls lie open, with diagrams of organs, stars, and what might be the digestive tract of a crocodile. Maybe. Your job? Organise, without touching anything that might kill you accidentally. So that's reassuring. As you sort dried leaves from crumbled roots, you stumble upon a strange note scribbled on papyrus. If fever increases, add charcoal and honey to wine. If breathing slows, use beetle poultice. Avoid opium near sunset. Your eyes linger on the last line. Avoid opium near sunset. You wonder how many times they've come close to losing him. Later, the healer returns, face unreadable. He pours a dark, viscous liquid into a jar and hands it to you with a single instruction. Deliver to the queen. You try not to look surprised. She's waiting in the antechamber, near Pharaoh's quarters, a quiet figure wrapped in pristine linen, her eyes sharp beneath her coal-lined lids. When you hand her the jar, she thanks you with a nod. Then she pauses, studying you. Have you served in the palace long? You nod slowly. Long enough, she smiles faintly. Then you already know. Everything here depends on what is said and what is not. You're not entirely sure if that's advice, a warning, or both. Probably both. By evening, the air in the palace is unbearably heavy. You pass servants praying quietly in corners. Guards shift more often than usual. Even the cats seem restless, darting between pillars like shadows unsure of their place. The healer finally exits Pharaoh's chamber at sunset. He doesn't speak, doesn't bow. He just walks straight past you, out into the courtyard, and disappears into the growing dark. Later, Queen Sitiya emerges with Pharaoh's high priest. The priest speaks briefly with the palace scribes. You catch only one phrase: his condition has improved. Relief ripples through the palace like a breeze breaking a long stagnant heat. It's not a miracle, but it's something. You're too tired to celebrate. You return to your quarters and fall onto your mat, still smelling faintly of fennel, dried fish, and whatever that frog was marinated in. As you lie in the quiet, you reflect on what you've seen. Pharaoh reduced from god to gasping mortal. Healers muttering spells. Queens offering thanks to servants. The veil between life and death worn thinner than you ever imagined. Maybe he'll recover. Maybe he won't. But you've seen him vulnerable now. You've carried potions meant for his failing lungs. You've stood inches from the queen and been trusted with silence. You've been closer to the heart of the empire than most servants ever dream. And you didn't spill anything. A victory. In your dreams, you carry a jar of glowing elixir through a city of stars, chased by whispers and watched by gods with crocodile eyes. You think you've earned a quiet day, maybe some simple sweeping, a little linen folding perhaps, but palace life doesn't care what you think you've earned. At dawn, Nacht tosses you a satchel and says, "To the market, river route, don't dally." You blink. "The market?" he grunts. "Supplies, Pharaoh's recovering? We need the good stuff." That's about all the explanation you get. River errands aren't common for palace servants, usually reserved for trusted runners with strong legs and discreet mouths. So the fact that you're chosen means one of two things. You're rising in rank, or Nacht's running out of options. You try not to think too hard about which it is. You follow the temple porters to the docks, where low-slung riverboats rock gently against stone piers. The Nile gleams under the morning sun, wide and patient, stretching endlessly in both directions. A handful of priests are loading wine jars. Palace stewards are muttering over lists. A cat is curled on a crate as if it personally owns the entire river. You board a modest barkie with a reed canopy, along with a driver named Hori, who's missing 2 teeth and has one eye that never quite points where you expect. "No sudden movements," he says, gesturing to the cargo. "Last servant broke a jar of oil and fell in, probably still floating somewhere." Reassured, you hold tight as the boat glides away from the dock, sails catching the breeze. The river journey is unexpectedly beautiful. Palm trees line the shores. Fishermen cast nets from shallows. Children wave from riverbanks. The Nile is Egypt's lifeblood, and from this angle, you understand why. It moves with the kind of certainty you wish your daily assignments had. But serenity ends quickly as you reach the city docks near the southern market district. Here it's chaos. Vendors shout, carts rattle, goats bleat, and the aroma of spice, fish and sweat collides mid-air. You've barely stepped off the boat before a pickpocket brushes your arm, eyeing your satchel like it holds secrets of the gods. "Careful," Hori grunts. "They'll steal your teeth if you yawn too wide." Your list is simple but specific. Black cumin, white lotus resin, date wine, myrrh, and linen bolts dyed with blue from indigo. The expensive kind that makes royal eyebrows raise approvingly. You grip the satchel tightly and plunge into the fray. You start at the spice stalls. A sharp-eyed woman with dyed fingertips presents you with 3 bowls of cumin, each supposedly superior. One smells sharp, another earthy, and one so strong it makes your nose sting. "How do I know which is best?" you ask. She leans in. "Taste it." You do. Immediately regret it. Your mouth goes dry, then somehow wetter. Then you sneeze so hard, you almost drop your satchel. She claps delightedly and shouts, "That's the one." You cough and hand over a few bronze weights, muttering about how Pharaoh owes you a favour. For this. Next, the linen merchant. He sizes you up immediately and assumes wrongly that you're not important enough to be picky. You are. Nacht will count every thread if you return with substandard cloth. You insist on opening each bolt, inspecting dye saturation, and finally pick the one that doesn't make your fingers blue. "Well chosen," says the merchant, surprised. "You're not as clueless as you look." "Thanks," you say flatly. "That's the nicest thing anyone's said today." The myrrh and lotus resin are next. You buy from a bald man whose stool smells like holy days and faint regret. He wraps your order in palm leaves and mutters a blessing over it, just in case. Protection from rot, he explains. You sincerely hope he means the herbs, not you. Finally, you locate the date wine, a thick, dark syrup sealed in ceramic jars. You test one carefully. It tastes sweet, warm, and vaguely dangerous. You approve. As you prepare to head back to the boat, you catch sight of something that makes your blood run cold. A palace guard in full livery, standing at the edge of the market, scanning the crowd. Not unusual, but this one looks like he's looking for someone. You duck behind a stall, clutching your satchel tighter. You're not guilty of anything this time, but the presence of a palace guard outside the palace is rarely good news for people in your job. You slip away quietly, keeping to shadows, finally reaching the boat just as Hori is finishing a nap under the canopy. "Market treat you kindly?" he asks, stretching. "I escaped with all my limbs and most of my dignity," you reply. "That's a win. You stow the goods, and soon you're gliding back up the Nile." As the palace towers come into view, you feel the familiar shift from common noise to controlled ritual. The guards at the gate don't ask questions, they just nod you through. You hand over the supplies to Nacht, who immediately inspects everything with all the enthusiasm of a suspicious crocodile. He sniffs the date wine, holds the linen to the light, and squints at the lotus resin. Finally he nods. You didn't mess it up. Coming from him, it's high praise. That night, you sit with Ahmos near the kitchens, your legs dangling over a cool stone ledge. He listens as you recount your adventure, your cumin sneeze, the pickpocket, the guard who nearly gave you heart failure. He laughs. "And here I thought river errands were boring." You watch the moon rise over the Nile, its reflection trembling like silver cloth. There's something deeply satisfying about the day, despite the chaos. You were trusted, you navigated crowds, made smart choices, returned safely. And Pharaoh, still recovering, will rest easier tonight, with his blue-dyed linens and his blessed jar of beetle-free myrrh. You may be just a servant. But for a moment, on a boat, with a satchel in a shouting market, you were the hand that kept the empire running, and no one even had to yell at you. That, by palace standards, is a triumph. The heat hits different today, not just hot, but heavy, like the sun has decided to sit on your shoulders and nap there. The palace feels slower, languid, but under the surface, something's churning. You hear it in the clipped footsteps of the stewards, see it in the tightly drawn expressions of the priests. Then you hear the word, harvest. A simple word, but in Egypt, it's everything. You're summoned to the palace storerooms, where rows of amphorae, grain sacks, and dried produce are being audited with furious intensity. Nacht, sweating through his linen tunic, greets you with his usual enthusiasm. Stop standing, start lifting. You're handed a long papyrus list and immediately paired with 2 grain counters and a scribe. Their job? Calculate what's come in from the fields. Your job? Move it. All of it. You begin hauling sacks of barley and emmer wheat from the unloading docks to the storage chambers. Each one is heavier than the last. Dust rises with every drop. The scent of dried straw, cracked mud, and ripe grain fills your nose. But something's wrong. The numbers aren't adding up. You see it in the frown of the scribe, in the quiet that settles every time a farmer's cart arrives half empty. Some carts don't arrive at all. You overhear one of the counters muttering, "Too dry this year. The Nile didn't rise enough." And there it is, the fear behind the silence. The Nile, Egypt's lifeline. Historians often speak of the inundation, the yearly flooding of the Nile that leaves behind rich black silt, nourishing the crops. But when it fails, even by a little, the consequences ripple fast and far. Famine doesn't need to knock, it just seeps through cracks. As the morning wears on, more carts arrive with smaller loads, fruit baskets half filled, figs that look shriveled, onions already sprouting in their sacks. You deliver them all, sweating and increasingly anxious. In the palace kitchens, Sebni is pacing, his brow furrowed. He pulls you aside. "Count how many sacks came in from Père Namut." "You do." 4. He shakes his head. "Last year they sent 12. Even the famously unbothered Sebni looks unsettled. The Queen's steward arrives later with a list of required items for Pharaoh's meals. Sebni scoffs at it. She wants honeyed pomegranates? From where? The gods? You help him prepare substitutions, whispering as you slice dried apricots to stand in for missing fruit. The irony isn't lost on either of you. The most powerful man in the world may not get his preferred snack today. Word spreads quickly among the servants. Crops are bad. Fish yields are low. The city granaries are checking their reserves. The priests have already begun extra offerings to Hapi, god of the Nile, and to Renenutet, goddess of the harvest. Even Ahmosa, who usually jokes about everything, is quiet as you help unload yet another cart of not enough. Remember the stories from our grandparents? He says, wiping his brow. The lean years. They say even the cats went hungry. You chuckle weakly, but the joke feels stale. That afternoon, you're sent with a group to inspect the palace gardens. The fig trees are thin, their leaves too pale. The irrigation ditches are dry in places. One gardener, an old woman who's worked here longer than some statues have stood, leans on her hoe and says flatly, "This isn't the Nile's mood, it's a warning." You water what little greenery remains and return to the palace just as a priest begins chalking protective symbols near the granaries. You catch the tail end of his chant, something about renewal, rebirth, and protection from hunger. But chants can't feed people. Later, a high scribe calls for every storage record from the last 3 years. You're one of the lucky few who get to help retrieve them from the archives. As you sort dusty scrolls, your eyes flick across inventory records, line after line of measurements, names, tribute values, storage totals. You see the difference right away. Last year, 14,800 sacks of emmer. This year, 8,300. You don't say anything. You don't have to. At sunset, the Queen herself walks the outer courtyard with her advisors. You glimpse her from behind a column. Her face is serene, but her hands are clenched. She's listening, nodding slowly, and glancing toward the temple towers silhouetted in fading light. The palace is preparing, not for celebration, but for scarcity. That night, meals are simpler, fewer spices, smaller portions, and even the cats seem unimpressed. You sit beside Ahmosa, chewing on hard bread that tastes harder than usual. "So," he says, "what do we do if the Nile doesn't rise again next year?" You shrug. "Hope Pharaoh doesn't blame the kitchen staff," he smirks, "or the laundry crew." But you both fall silent, because you know that when things get bad, fingers get pointed. And servants are the easiest targets. You return to your sleeping mat, exhausted from lifting, sorting, and listening. The palace feels different tonight. Not afraid exactly, but alert, watching the horizon, listening for answers in the wind. You fall asleep with dreams of cracked riverbeds, empty carts, and giant ears of wheat crumbling into dust. And somewhere, far below the palace in the cool of the archives, those scrolls remain, quiet witnesses to the numbers no one wants to believe. The palace always breathes a little differently at night, slower, quieter, like it's exhaling after holding its breath all day. But tonight feels especially strange, still, heavy. Even the guards along the inner courtyard walk slower, their footsteps echoing hollowly between the columns. You've been summoned to help with Pharaoh's final nightly ritual. Not final, thank the gods, but the elaborate wind-down ceremony he performs every evening before rest. Apparently, now that he's feeling better, a miracle that may or may not involve beetle paste, everything must return to order. And order, in Pharaoh's world, is everything. Nacht finds you near the linen storage, practically dragging you toward the preparation room. "You'll assist with incense," he says, shoving a small pouch of myrrh and a clay oil lamp into your hands. "Don't spill it, don't sniff it, don't sneeze near it." Reassured as always. The night ritual is not some sleepy routine, it's theatre, a procession of sacred scents, polished words, and gestures practiced so many times they look effortless. But behind the curtain there are countless servants like you, running around in near silence to make it happen. The main chamber is lit only by oil lamps and moonlight pouring in through the lattice screens. It creates a soft, golden haze across the floor, like a painting come to life. A carved alabaster statue of Maat stands at the centre of the room. Balance again, always balance. Your role is small. Keep the incense burning just long enough for the priest to circle Pharaoh once during his final blessing, but not so long that the smoke chokes everyone. Simple. Until you're handed an ornate incense burner shaped like a lion and realise it weighs about as much as a full-grown goose. A high priest enters first, reciting verses from the Book of Coming Forth by Day. You've heard these before during funerals, but tonight they're meant to remind Pharaoh of his divine legacy and protection. He stands just beyond a sheer curtain, out of sight, but not out of reach. His silhouette is calm, unmoving. Then come the anointers, 2 temple servants, bearing oils and perfumes. They apply a mixture to Pharaoh's hands, feet, and forehead, each with a separate prayer. You catch the scent of lotus and sandalwood as they pass. It smells like dreams. Your turn. You light the incense, waiting for the oil to catch, then wave the burner slowly, as instructed. The smoke curls upward, forming delicate spirals in the lamplight. It's strangely hypnotic, and for a moment, you forget your sore feet, the dry harvest, and your never-ending to-do list. But as you step back into place, something shifts. The queen enters, quietly, regally, and kneels beside Pharaoh's bed. This part isn't scripted. She speaks softly, not for the room but for him. "You're stronger," she says, "but we must be careful. They're watching, some loyal, some not." Her voice doesn't tremble, but her fingers tighten around his. You realise with a pang that this ritual is more than ceremony tonight. It's strategy, reassurance, a declaration of power disguised as prayer. Historians still debate how involved royal women were in politics, whether they pulled strings quietly behind curtains or merely whispered advice into the ears of kings. But if you had to guess, Queen Sitia's hand is already on the rudder, steering carefully through the rapids ahead. As the priests conclude the ritual, everyone steps back, bowing low. Pharaoh raises a single hand, just slightly, as if to say, "Yes, I am still here, still strong, still divine." You blow out the burner. The smoke lingers, mingling with the silence. Afterward, you help clean the chamber, carefully folding the linen cloths, replacing the ceremonial oils, rewrapping the feather of Ma'at in its protective scroll. Everything must be returned exactly as it was. The head priest pauses as he leaves, glancing at you. "You handled the burner well," he says. "Most servants cough the first time." You want to say thank you, but your throat is still tight from the smoke. You manage a respectful nod. Back in the hallway, Amos meets you with a grin and a smudge of flour on his tunic. "Done playing holy smoke," he jokes. You roll your eyes. "Didn't burn anything down," he chuckles. "Progress." Together, you make your way to the outer courtyard, passing guards standing a little straighter than usual. You notice one of them, young, newly assigned, watching the Queen's chambers with an expression you can't quite read. Curious? Loyal? Calculating? You make a mental note of his face, just in case. Palace life sharpens your instincts in ways you never expected. The moon is high now. You sit on a bench beneath a fig tree, the night breeze tugging softly at your tunic. For a moment, everything feels still again. Not heavy like before, but peaceful. The kind of quiet that only comes after effort, after ceremony, after smoke and shadows and whispered warnings. You think about Pharaoh, alive and resting, about the Queen's voice steady in the dark, about the servants who made it all happen while remaining invisible. You exhale slowly. The ritual is done. Balance has been restored. For now. But you know the palace well enough to understand that balance is never permanent. It's a scale that tips the moment someone blinks too long. And you, tiny servant that you are, still walk that scale every day. As you lie down later, the scent of incense still clinging faintly to your skin, you let the stillness sink in. Tomorrow, the sun will rise again, and Pharaoh will expect everything to be just as it was. The palace doesn't sleep. Not really. Even in the dead of night, it breathes. Stone and gold and silence woven together in a hush that stretches from one end of the estate to the other. Torches crackle softly in sconces. Bronze doors groan under their own weight when opened slowly. Somewhere, far off, a scribe still scratches notes by candlelight. You know this rhythm now. Tonight, you've been assigned one final task, escorting oil lamps through the upper halls. It's part of the nightly rotation to ensure no sacred corner is left in darkness. Simple, quiet, but somehow deeply sacred. You start near the royal library, walking carefully with a small clay lamp in hand. Its flickering glow throws soft shadows against columns painted with lotus flowers and vignettes of gods. The walls seem to shimmer in the low light, their painted figures dancing slightly as if they too are winding down for the night. You pause in front of a mural of Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, seated beside a scroll, watching as the painted eye seems to meet yours. Still here, you think. Still standing. You step softly down the hallway, sandals whispering against polished stone, until you reach the Queen's private garden. This is a rare view, one reserved for only the most trusted attendants. It's quieter than the main courtyard, tucked behind towering papyrus stalks and flowering acacia. Moonlight bathes the white stones in silver. You glimpse Queen Sitiya sitting on a carved bench, alone, her silhouette framed by the low breeze. She doesn't speak. You don't either. Instead, you bow and continue past. Some silences are sacred. The rest of your route winds through sleeping chambers, unused banquet halls, and narrow servant corridors that most never see in daylight. You place fresh oil in a long hallway lined with statues of past pharaohs, each ruler staring forward in eternal watchfulness, their chins proud, their eyes hollow. One statue, older than the others, has a crack along its cheek, a scar time couldn't polish away. You find it strangely comforting. As you set the final lamp and head back toward your quarters, you pass the scribe's wing. A door is ajar. Inside, Merit, the scribe who once teased you over a sneeze, scribbles furiously by candlelight, papyrus scrolls piled around her, like sand dunes. She sees you, nods once, then returns to her work. You're not the only one still moving through the hush. Eventually, you reach the servants' quarters. Most are already asleep, limbs tangled under thin linen blankets, the occasional snore rising like a flute note from the quiet. You slide onto your mat with a deep exhale, body sighing with relief. And then, you don't close your eyes, not yet. You lie there, staring upward, listening, to the faint wind ruffling papyrus leaves, to the low lap of the Nile beyond the walls, to the creak of a wooden beam cooling in the night. You reflect on everything. The day you spilled water and nearly lost your position. The scent of incense during sacred rites, the heat of the kitchens, the weight of the laundry baskets, the hiss of oil on a hot plate, the secret you overheard in the scroll chamber, the leopard that brushed against your leg like you were a tree, the Queen's careful, unspoken warning, Pharaoh's rasping breath, the beetle poultice. The palace is made of more than stone and gold. It is held together by quiet moments, steady hands, careful steps, people like you. And now, as the night deepens, you feel that weight lift just a little. Tomorrow, the palace will demand again. It always does. You'll rise, work, carry, bow, serve. But for now, in the softness of moonlight and the hush of resting gods, you allow yourself something rare. Pride, not loud or boastful, not gilded, but quiet, steady, honest. You survived. You learned the rhythm of the palace. You bent when others broke. And even if no one carves your name into the temple walls, you know, you are here. Now let's leave the palace behind for just a moment. Let your breathing slow. Feel your shoulders soften. You've done enough for today. You've carried gold, lit sacred flames, and listened to secrets meant for no one. Imagine the moonlight falling gently across your skin, cool and pale. You're lying not on a reed mat now, but somewhere soft, safe. The breeze drifting in through the window smells faintly of lotus flowers, of warm bread cooling on a clay shelf, of distant river reeds swaying beneath the stars. The sounds of the palace, distant drums, the low rustle of palm fronds, the soft patter of feline paws across stone, fade into a comforting hush. Even Pharaoh himself has fallen silent, his breath steady once more, tucked beneath linen and shadow. You've earned this quiet, you've earned this stillness. The servants sleep, the guards lean their spears beside their chairs. Even the statues seem to blink slower now. And you simply rest, you let go of the day, knowing you moved through it with care, with intention. You played your part in a story bigger than anyone will ever know. Let that thought cradle you now. That quiet matters too. The unseen work, the whispered prayers, the careful polishing of a goblet no one will remember. The gods see you. And now, finally, it's time to close your eyes. Time to drift far from the palace, through dreams filled with sunlight and gardens and calm waters. No shouting, no chores, just peace, just breathe, just sleep.